G'day listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL Fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players that are going to bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Hef and I'm joined by my co-host Kays. How you going, mate?
Not too bad, Hef. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. It was the first work day I've had of summer so far, I think. Oh wait, no it's not. I've had a few days. But anyway, I spent my whole day today playing golf is what I'm trying to get at, Kays.
You just live the dream, don't you?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I work as a teacher, as many people know. The last week of school, I get to take a bunch of kids playing golf, but it's really just an excuse for me to go out and have a hit and let the kids just kind of walk around the golf course for the day. So it's been a pretty good day for me. How's your day been, Cass?
Get paid to play golf, have 16 weeks off a year?
I'm basically a professional golfer. Essentially, I get paid to play golf.
Live the dream, don't you?
I really do. How was your day?
Yeah, nothing too crazy. Just, I'm just really preparing for Christmas. I'm in that mindset. I'm like, everything's working down.
Okay.
Got a golf trip coming up this weekend, test matches the weekend after, then it's basically Christmas. So all my next weekends are up and about. I'm excited.
Well, I guess we should apologise to our Perth listeners, or commiserations for losing the test today, I heard.
Don't lock us out, you bloody state.
It's a beautiful state. I can understand why they want to keep it to themselves, but it'd be nice if we could come in every now and then and have a look.
Very nice.
Some great beers out of WA, as we know, Kays, but we won't get into that tonight. What are we going to get into tonight?
So tonight we are going to talk all the position changes. So Hollywood Hef has got the leak from, Gil McLaughlin, I assume.
Yeah, that's who it's from.
Straight Gil at afl.com.au sends the email through, and we've got the positions. So we're going to go through all of them. Now, we're not going to be talking about your Lairds, Tarantos, Mitch Duncan types. We're going to talk about the keeper leg guys.
Yeah,
so
the guys that are relevant. They aren't 2G4P.
Exactly, because I figure yes, Laird loses back status, but he's a lock for keeping. Everyone's going to keep him. No one's going to delist him because he's a mid only. He was one of the highest scoring players. So that's the basis behind that. So we'll talk about those guys more when we get to our preseason rankings, and we obviously put our rankings out for startup drafts. So we'll get into that later. But look, these are all the guys that you'll probably be tossing up over the next 100 days, I think, until the season starts.
Something like that. It sounds like a long way away, but it really isn't when it starts.
Yeah, it is. So we'll be talking about the guys that you'll lose sleep over because you don't know whether to keep them in your final 12 or 16 or whatever. So hopefully we'll give you a bit of an insight there. But before we get onto that, Hef, we put out a little, a resource last week, the Drafty Fantasy Guide. So if you guys haven't checked that out, I think it's available to all gold members. Is that
all
right?
members.
All members.
You just have to be a member.
Be a member.
Yep,
and you
bronze,
get this
silver, gold, doesn't matter what you are.
11,000 words, about a 34-page document.
Yep.
We basically go through every draftee taken this year and just kind of look at them from a fantasy perspective. So a super, super valuable resource to, all keeper league players, but also, if you are into your fantasy classic, it's good for your cash cows and all that kind of stuff too. So we kind of get into, who you should be picking up from the start of the season and potentially who's to follow in a couple of years' time.
That's correct. Also last week too, we had we recorded a podcast on our top 12 fantasy draftees. So we pick out the top 12 fantasy scorers from their underage scoring, and we think have a look who we think might translate to the AFL level, or players we think might get a game early, or if they do get a game next year, they might score okay from a fantasy perspective. So there's a bonus episode for members out there as well. So there's lots of good stuff going on for members at the moment.
And probably just touch on that. So we're not going to talk about any of those players tonight because annoyingly, 11 of the 12 players are mid-onlys, which obviously doesn't help the spread. But I suppose the one guy that stood out in our top 12 that's a DPP is Josh Rachelli. So probably one you should be looking at for your forward spots on all sides, I reckon, this year.
So that's the only draftee we'll talk about tonight is Josh Rachelli. We've already talked about him, really. That's it. He's a forward. He's a forward. Forward, and he's a good scorer. So he's one we could actually think about. But we kind of talk. We don't really put too much emphasis on midfielders in this podcast because they're a bit boring. We'll talk about players that might have lost, forward status to be a midfielder and stuff like that. But anything like that, we won't really discuss too much. It's more about the DPPs, the guys that you can play in your harder to fill positions, really. But before we get stuck into the main pod, we got a few things. And now, Kays, I actually left the Remedy kombuchas down the other end of the house.
I'm very thirsty.
So I swear I had them, but now I can't really run off the stream.
I might not be able to get through the whole show without a remedy.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that. We might be able to send a text to my partner down the hallway, see if she can deliver them down. But I have no idea what I just did with them. I must have put them somewhere. But anyway, there's that. But also, we're streaming this podcast live as well. So you might notice if you are watching the stream, there's a chat box up in the top or the right-hand side of the screen. So if you actually want to have a look and ask us a question or interact with us live or make a funny comment or try to make us giggle throughout the podcast, jump on the stream and post something on there. Try to keep it pretty clean though if possible, but yeah. Anyways, Kays, we're going to get stuck into it. So first up, we're going to be looking at the losses. So these are the players that were handy last year in keep leagues, but have now lost essentially forward, back or ruck status. Not many people lose ruck status, but the players have lost a handy status and how it's going to have an impact on our fantasy sides. So who's up first, Kays?
The first one, which is probably going to be a conundrum for a few coaches, I reckon, is Matt Kennedy. So he was a centre forward DPP last year. He's lost the forward status, so he's a mid only. So ended up the season pretty well, averaged 85.9 and averaged 95.4 in his last 5, including 3 tons. So came home like an absolute freight train. I was pretty stoked with him in my team in the podcasters league. Now, I'd almost go like, if Carlton hadn't changed their list, I'd almost go, yep, I reckon he's worth holding as a mid only. However, we've seen the arrival of Adam Chera and we've seen the arrival of George Hewitt. Now, both have kind of been pegged to play that inside mid kind of role, which Kennedy was playing last year. So the big question is, what does that mean for Matt Kennedy? So it does kind of take him from almost an automatic keeper to probably not. So if you were in that boat, look, we kind of base all these projections on our home league, which is keeping around 16 players. So take that in mind when we chat about it. But look, I think it's an incredibly risky play because we know that he can kind of go in and out of favour at the Blues. Like he'll play 5 games in a row, go bananas, and then just play VFL for 5 games. So just because we don't know what's going to happen with that side week to week, it's just hard to recommend him as a keeper after losing that forward status.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just the midfield at Carlton actually looks kind of competitive at the moment, especially bringing in Chera and Hewitt. We talked about it before. We actually have a question in the chat already. We're just saying, will George Hewitt be relevant? I think he thinks no because he's going to tag every game, but he's named as a defender, so he may actually be relevant. But we'll just address that one now while we're on the topic of Carlton. But Kennedy, I'm not fan on without that forward status, but I think that was pretty expected anyway to not be before this year anyway. True. So doesn't, it's not a shock to anyone, so it doesn't really matter. Probably one that was a bit more shocking was Daniel Howe. So he was a back and midfielder last year. He's a mid only this year, shockingly. So this kind of sucks because he was a super reliable defender option last year, especially for players that took him off the waiver wire and things like that. So he was a generally pretty popular waiver pickup on many coaches last year. I still think he's worthy of a spot in deeper leagues, but in a league like ours where you're keeping 16, what do you average? 79 to 80. Surely you've got someone better that you could take a punt on or something like that than you'd be taking over Daniel Howe, don't you reckon?
It's risky because obviously new coach, you don't know exactly where Sam Mitchell wants to play him. The issue with Hawthorn is you could go back and play defence again, but their backline is so good at the moment. Will, Day, Scrimshaw, Jaff, the list goes on in terms of good half-back flank running kind of roles. So, and as a pure wingman, it's a hard role to kind of score regularly. So, I think he's got to go back in the pool in most leagues. Yeah,
I agree too. Jai Caldwell Kays. Now, this absolutely breaks my heart.
This hurts you.
It sucks because, you just didn't get to use him. So, you got 1.5 games in season. You got a final, but fantasy's over
in round 1
by then. Did he?
Yeah.
A ton?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
It was like a ton and 19 or something like that. I looked at his scores this week.
I did not know it was a ton. Yeah. Anyway, that doesn't. I obviously mustn't have appreciated. I must have blocked it in my mind. The season was that bad.
You were trying to tank from round 1 anyway, so you've been upset.
Anyways, but that one sucks because Jai Caldwell losing forward status. That hurts us a bit. But anything else you want to add on that one?
I think he goes straight into that midfield. I think he can be a very good scorer. There's no way in hell you'd be dropping him, would you? Or would you?
No. Well, my team sucks though, so it's very hard to drop him on my side. In a good side, it might be hard to keep him there, but I'm not sure. But I'm definitely keeping him,
61 in the elimination final, basically scored all his points in that first half and then just basically fell asleep in the second half of that game like most of the Bombers players. But I think I'd keep him, but I am biased. So
yeah, I'm very biased.
Tom Phillips is the next one. So probably 2021's most disappointing player from a fantasy perspective, I would say. Has lost his DPP centre forward status and now is a mid only. Averaged 73 in the end last year and last 5 was a 72.8 average with the 1 ton. So I think it was his only ton. I scored it with about 3 games to go, I think. So He's going to be heartbroken because people would have maybe drafted him high in new leagues. They would have put a lot of faith in him as that forward role. But look, he had 5 scores in the 50s last season. New coach could mean new role, but not likely. He's going to play that pure wingman role, which doesn't always correlate to good scores. So I think you'd be a brave man to keep him as a mid-only.
Yeah, I think, as a mid-only. The thing is, he's every chance to go, I guess not at Hawthorn, but at Collingwood, he always would sneak up forward, so there's a chance to get that forward status again. But I think they've firmly got... There's just so many wingers though and stuff at Hawthorn, so there is a chance that he could regain it at some stage. But I think even if he does, we saw him play like a fair midfield time last year and didn't actually score that well anyway, so it probably doesn't really matter. But there is a chance he could regain, I think, at some stage. But whether that's still a fantasy relevant,
I wouldn't hold him on the basis of him getting it back.
No, you never do that. That's probably a golden rule that we should be teaching our listeners or anyone who's new to keeper leagues. You don't, or draft in general, you don't draft a player hoping they change their position, that's for sure. Yeah. Anyway, who's next?
Josh Dacos. So it's a bit of a surprising one. He is back to mid-only. He was centre forward in the AFL Fantasy for those guys who played keepers there. So had probably a down year in what we expected. So averaged 71.4, came home with a 73 in his last 5. He like promised the world a couple of years ago, and last year delivered an Atlas, really. So I'm just not sure what to do with someone like Dacos. He's on that borderline where I think you'd feel sick if you put him back in the pool when he comes out and could average 90.
Yeah, true.
Collingwood are genuinely in a rebuild. So do they throw him and his brother the keys to the midfield, with guys like Pendlebury and Sidebottom on the way out? I don't know. It's almost come down to your personal taste, I reckon. Yeah,
I think it's a punt because he's either... just because of the way he performed a couple of years ago, it's like really difficult to put him back. But like, I guess this is stating the obvious. He's either going to go big or he's going to be shit. One of the two, and you've just got to take that punt.
Is he one who could grab forward status? Like if they go up, kids, you're all playing in the midfield. Could he be one that rotates forward with Lipinski as a straight swap kind of thing? I don't know.
There's actually a question later asking me who do I think might regain DPP at some stage, and I had him in there as one. Yeah. Ooh. Well, just because I feel like their midfield is kind of... I don't know. It becomes like it's just kind of so deep. Well, it's not deep. It's just hard to tell who the actual midfielder is going to be. Like we talked about this on the Drafty podcast. You've got Pendlebury did play in a few different positions this year, but I think they're most likely still going to use him in the midfield. You've got Taylor Adams, who's a gun, who's going to be playing in there. Another. Facebook comment just come through that Lipinski is probably going to be relevant in there now, especially because Pendlebury's fractured his leg. But I don't know if that's going to keep him out of heaps of next season. But anyway, and then you got the Browns. You've got people like
Sidebottom will play basically forward. This year,
that's the year. I put him in there. But then you've got Finley Mcrae that they were using in there for bits and pieces. Like even though the midfield's not great, it's who are their midfielders, and I think they still might rotate a few through there, which means like they might be some DPPs and stuff going on.
New coach, anything can happen.
Exactly, that's the thing. Anyway, we'll move on to the next one. Brandon Parfitt. So this is relevant to the, I guess, the AFL fantasy format, not ultimate footy. But he was a centre forward at the end of last season in the AFL fantasy format. He was only a centre only in ultimate footy anyway, but he's become a centre only in all of the formats now, I guess, until ultimate footy releases what they do. But look, he only gained it late in the season, so it's not like it's a huge shock to anyone, or people I think probably just got hopeful that he might keep it, I reckon. But if you look at their midfield, it consists of Cam Guthrie. I guess Duncan can play back and sometimes half forward and on a wing as well, so it depends where he plays. But then you got Dangerfield, you got Isaac Smith, who's more of an outside player. Menegola is more of an outside player. Selwood still rolls through there. It's just, I don't think... He's only 23 years old, so I don't think he's going to play anywhere else but midfield for the time being. I thought, there was times last year where you thought he might have been phased out a little bit more and being put forward, and that's obviously why he got forward status. But I think towards the end of the season, he came back as one of their midfielders, and because he's so young, I feel like Geelong's midfield is just so old and slow. It just looks like a midfield that's not going to win a premiership. Do you agree? Is that harsh?
Or this is got to, we keep saying each year, but surely this is their last chance. Yeah. Like they haven't really, topped up with any high class players.
Correct.
From the top of my head. They're gone again. They've added, Segler in there to help in the ruck. But I don't know. I think it's going to be the first 6 to 10 weeks of Geelong season is going to basically say where they're at, I reckon. Because if they're not winning well, they've probably got enough kids that they can start generating a bit of youth in that.
I agree. But the thing is, like, Yeah, I don't know. I just think they need to actually start playing someone like Parket as one of their kind of main midfielders if they want him to kind of continue, the legacy of, the current midfielders they got and kind of start breeding the next generation. So, yeah, I agree. If they start to actually, drop off a little bit, then someone like Parket, I think, is going to be one of their main midfielders that they're going to go to. So, I don't see him getting forward status, but there is a chance because it happened last year. And, if they're in the hunt, then they might put him up there as well. So, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But, yeah, I don't know. Let's move on to one that's you're very fond of, and that is your boy.
This is a heartbreaker.
Harry Schoenberg.
Yes, he's lost his forward status. He's down to a mid only, which is obviously no surprising to anyone who saw him play last year. Ended the season with a 69.4 average, averaged 83.8 in the last 5, including a ton in that time. He just came home like an absolute freight train. I reckon he even had you backflipping, didn't he?
Yeah, I was on board. Well, yeah. I was on board as a forward. But no, I did actually. No, he had a few good performances where they kind of let him do what he wants, and he scored well.
And he's good at doing that.
But will he, when they're not trying to develop and play seriously, will he be good?
Look at her. It hurts. But my thing is that no one's breaking down a midfield spot in that side just yet. So, like, Matt Crouch may return, he may not. Like, I don't even know if he's training still. Jordan Dawson's arrived, yes, but he's that outside wing kind of player. So it doesn't actually hurt him. Nothing's going to hurt him in that engine room. Comes into his third year, and we all know that third year means breakout year hef. So I'm expecting that 69 to turn into maybe like an 85 this year.
Okay, yeah.
85?
No, I don't think so.
What do you reckon?
I think maybe 80 if you're lucky.
85.
Yeah.
85.
Like, you've got Crouch to come back in. Like, he would just eat up heaps of fantasy scoring. In that
if he plays.
Yeah, if he plays.
Training?
That's true. I don't even know.
Like, Rory Sloane's getting old. Like, what's he going to do?
Yeah, I just don't see him. I still don't see him
as the... Keezy and Harry in there just fucking absolutely...
I just don't see him as the accumulator type. It's more the in and under kind of.
He's such an absolute beast.
Yeah, well, like, if you're still in your team, because you don't even hold the faith, you traded him.
I was going for a flag.
You traded him. Yeah, that was never going to happen. You traded him for Lockie Hunter.
Which he's horribly. They're both lost forward status. Hooray.
We'll talk about that. So, well, let's go first of all. Are you regretting that decision to trade him now?
No, because I thought Hunter was going to give him the best chance.
And I've actually
forgotten. And the point was I traded out Bose, who stunk, and Hearn, who was on fire. So it's like... It works out.
All right, so
Hunter's still a keeper. I haven't lost the keeper.
Second question is, would you be keeping Schoenberg if you had
Yes, I think so. I'm a big one. I don't know. I think you are too. Always good to see a player's last 5 average.
Yeah.
And see where that's kind of trending. And I think if you popped Harry Schoenberg into your precious breakout tracker, I reckon he'd be flying.
I think it's pretty low because his start was dismal. But I think if he has another season like that, he'd be fine. But like... I don't know. I just feel like they were just trying things with Schoenberg, and it might not be these last 5 might not be a true representation of what's going forward. I think, once you're out of the finals hunt, you do a few different things. Like, some of the midfield roles he had were pretty ridiculous that he got in there. So I don't know if they'll do that if they're fully fit and things like that. But that said, I do think he's a good player. I don't think he will progress. I'm just not sure he's going to be the 100 plus, 110
85,
plus
85
next season. Oh,
who else is feeling it? I'm feeling it.
Post on the chat if you feel that Harry Schoenberg is going to average 85 plus next season. Anyways, we'll move on
going to light up
to Chad Warner.
Yes, another one that I have in my stable has lost forward status. He's a mid only.
Do you have any forwards left?
My forwards left are like Aaron Norton, Jordan Mcavoy, who may or may not be allowed to play ever again, and that's about it. Or Ben Ainsworth. But I do have Tim English and Luke Jackson as ruck forwards, so that hopefully I might be able to get a nice ruckman in. I can play them as my forwards. That might be my my kind of thing. Anyway, Warner. It was always coming. He played in that midfield from the start. And I don't reckon, unlike, yes, Schoenberg and Warner average exactly the same, but what we saw from Schoenberg is his big late half, whereas Warner was injured round 12, didn't see him again until the elimination final, and only had 35 points there. He did turn up in round 3, so he can really do it. And I think when he was up and firing fantasy-wise, their midfield had a few guys out, so he was just taking advantage of that spot. Now, I like it because, Kennedy's getting older, Parker's getting older, and he's a guy that can genuinely play forward. So, they can inject someone like Water in there. But their midfield just runs so deep. Like, Goulden, Campbell, Stevens. There's just so many players that can go through there. So, for me, I'm lucky he's a rookie in our league, so I can just upgrade him for free. But if I was going to, if he was in my pool, I don't think I'd be able to keep him now with no forward status.
Yeah, forward status. Without forward status, it's hard. Like you basically said, it's just so hard to pick who their midfielders are and who their next generation midfielders are as well. So you've got, Parker and Kennedy and things like that up there. But like, who their next generation is going to be. We saw at the end of last year, just they rotated so many players through there.
Mills goes through there now, obviously. Like, Heaney can pinch hit. So it's just like They've got so much talent there. It's not funny.
Yeah, and we just saw, we'd see Papley go in there randomly for a week and then not go in the next week, and then we saw McInerney go in there for a week and not go in the next week, and it's just like, is Warner the next guy? Who knows? And they've got a few kids coming through.
I'm keen on him. I think he's going to be a great player. I just can't put the faith in him that he's going to be keeper worthy, I think.
Yeah, that's basing it on our league where we keep 16. Like if you got a deeper league, which I've got him in a dynasty league, I'm keeping him.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. He's fine. We've just had AJS Hawker, who's a big fan of the show, who keeps the Facebook algorithm going by liking all of our posts. He wrote "Go the Berg" on there. So
hell yeah,
he's all aboard Schoenberg for this season. So, and another Facebook user actually said Sheldrick to replace Kennedy in 2023, and I don't mind that because he had a bit of fantasy pedigree as a rookie as well. So anyway, let's move on to Luke McDonald. He is gone, I think. So he was a defender, now he's a centre. Fantasy-wise, footy-wise maybe? No, fantasy-wise I reckon he's gone anyway. He had that super cushy roll across half-back in 2020. That was taken by Zeeble, and then Aaron Hall took it over from him, basically. Played in a wing after returning from injury last year. And then with Dumont gone, he probably just stays on that wing, I think, as well. He's just not worth it as a mid-only. He's just throwing back.
No.
Yeah, I don't.
Not from what we saw last year.
Yeah,
definitely not.
He just couldn't get into the game. But the thing is, I don't know if it was just from being injured so much. Like it took a while, because another one we'll talk about later is Jed Anderson, who really was slow going into the once he came back from injury. Maybe I don't know, maybe they're limiting or something. But it's just too risky to, especially again referring back to our league, if you only got 16, to risk a spot on a guy like him.
But if you go on the pure role, like Zeeble and Hall can't play the wing role, whereas McDonald can play the wing role.
Yeah,
and so I don't think they're going to swap.
Yeah, okay.
That makes sense.
No, that's fair enough.
Speaking of guys who, probably didn't do as well as we thought, Lockie Scholl, he's lost his back status. He's a mid-only. Only averaged a 67.3 last year. And we thought he was absolutely going to be the next big thing. He had 3 tons in the first 5 games of the year. And obviously that Dawson arrival for me doesn't help him personally. Plus, will we see Wayne Miller a fit? Not sure. But I still think there's a chance that he could be a handy player and he could actually get that back status back. But at the moment, he's a risky hold.
Yeah, I agree. So, you'd want him if he had back status, and I think he's actually a player. Again, another one in the questions I'm already answering now. I think he's my player that'll also probably get back status back because if with Dawson coming into the side,
Dawson and Seedsman are the wing.
Yeah, exactly. So he's gonna have to play somewhere else. He might rotate through that, but I reckon he might get back status back. So again, he's one you might pick up late in anticipation. Don't go early on him, but I'm off Lockie Scholl at the moment. He's just as well as his disposal's pretty bad, so I don't think they actually like playing him at the moment because they want to try to actually improve their skills, the Crows, and actually use the footy a lot better. And I think he's got to improve in that area before he's actually even solidified his spot on the side too.
First hot take of the preseason. Jordy Clark is another one who's lost defender status. He's a mid-only this season, which really, really hurts. Only averaged 56.4 last season, came home with a 79 average in a couple games. Look, new club, new opportunities. So is this a guy you could take a punt on? Look, there's so many fantasy coaches that absolutely love Jordan Clark, but look, as he goes to a mid-only, there's just so much risk there. And he's one, it's funny, Freo's midfielder, kind of like we were talking about with Collingwood, they're young, they're up and coming. What role will he play there? Would he go in the middle? Is he a wingman there? Can he replace an Aish or an Akers on the wing? Is he going half back? But then you've got guys like Tucker and Young. So it's just I'm not sure where he fits. So therefore I can't really go on with too much confidence with him.
Yeah, I've got absolutely no idea, especially on that wing. Everyone talks, Chera leaving, and he was playing on the wing a bit last year, but the guy that came from Gold Coast, Will Brodie. Will Brodie coming in, who gets that wing role? It's too hard to say at the moment. As a fantasy scorer, he's definitely got the game for it. He's definitely the type.
Yeah.
But I think you need that halfback role for him to be fantasy relevant. So if he's going to be fantasy relevant, he'll get DPP anyway.
Yeah.
And if he's not, if he's in the midfield,
I'm happy to take him as a flyer in a draft.
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't think I can keep him in a 16.
Not someone you're going to go super early on.
No.
Yeah, you've kind of given him enough chances now. You're ready to just pick someone else and let him slide and take him.
See what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Miles Bergman's the next one. So he was so handy last year, listed as a back and a forward. He's now mid-only. So this one sucks, but I did see it coming because, as you know, I watched.
Think he was going to get defender status though?
No, maybe.
I know he played a lot of wing, but
hear me out here. But I watched Port, I obviously watch Port very closely.
Yes.
I go to every game. And because a lot of the last ones were at home too, because of the finals and stuff like that.
The ones that you don't walk out early of.
Oh, yeah. I did walk out early in one of these, but it was still noticeable. But yeah, so if you watch him, I reckon when you're at the game, it's just so easy to notice who's at the centre bounce and stuff. Because sometimes even on the TV, they don't even show you the centre bounce, or especially don't show you the wingman all the time as well. So they zoom in or the camera pans straight away. So watching him super closely, he's basically just on every wing, at every CBA. So it was going to happen. But the thing is, I just don't see it changing because they just use him so frequently in the end. So it's like him and Dersmar kind of were starting on the wings, and Amon they'd kind of rotate, and then Amon would either go in the middle, as an inside midfielder, or play on the wing, and then he'd go to the bench. And it was kind of like a rotation thing that they did. So I just don't think he's going to be moving to the defence anytime soon. But there is a chance. The thing is, Dumont comes in, who played on a wing at North Melbourne, but I think Port want to use him as an inside midfielder because that was his kind of junior position, and he was kind of converted into an outside midfielder at North Melbourne. And you see Port's kind of lack of grunt in that preliminary final. I think they just need a bit of depth in there and maybe senior body. That said, I still definitely think they want to, develop your Butters and try to get Rosie in there and all that sort of stuff. So even Houston runs through there every now and then. I don't know how often he'll still do that. But and then obviously the other redheaded Port Adelaide. I've just had a mental blank. I'm true. I have a mental blank all over the place tonight. Too much time in the sun today, I think.
Brain's gone to mush.
Yeah, I'm actually very tired. I've been awake since 4:30. But anyway, I think he's another one that they'll try to continue to develop through there. And they might. My point is, I'm going so far off the point. I don't think that Trent Dumont's going to affect him playing on the wing either. So anyway, what we really need.
Would you keep him though?
Oh, see, this is the hard one for me. He was definitely, if he had any kind of DPP, if he had back status, but I'm probably not now, which kind of sucks. But also, I don't know who I'm keeping on top of a lot of these people too. So I kind of had them all sewn up. This kid's young.
You've got to pretend that your team's good, Hef.
Exactly.
That's the tough thing.
Another player like Devin Robertson, who we'll talk about next, he's another player I've got, and I was like, I'm keeping this. Well, no, I wasn't always, because I always thought he might lose forward status, but he's another one that I was so much more keen on with DPP.
But he only averaged 49 last year.
I know, but the thing is, he'll never get a settled role or anything like that. But and he had a couple games where he had some 80s or 79s and 80s and things like that. So the thing is, he'd just be up and down, because in some games he wouldn't actually get in the midfield, and then other games he would. But he's another one that I expected Devin Robertson to miss it. And it just makes him very hard to keep, just because they've got that super deep midfield.
Possible for him to keep.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the thing is that kind of keeps you coming in is he's got that junior fantasy pedigree where he was was the best fantasy scorer of
if
his
not close to.
Yeah, if not, yeah. So that's the one that keeps you sucked in. But yeah, I just don't see him cracking that midfield full time. So he needs that DPP. He's the type of player that I don't think he plays another position. He plays when someone's injured, goes into the midfield, and then comes out. So yeah, I'm not super keen on him.
He's just one of those poor bastards who's stuck at a team where he's at a good team, which is what you want to be at.
Yeah, exactly.
Footy wise, but you just
that poor bastard.
He's just got to bide his time, I suppose, in terms of getting a proper crack at what he's good at.
Yeah, exactly.
Nick Cox obviously quite easily loses his back forward DPP, mid only, just basically played pure wing last year. And once again, lucky for me, I can keep him on my rookie list, but definitely wouldn't keep him in a regular sized keeper league. If you're playing your dynasties, I reckon he's worth stashing, because I think he's got a bit of a unique ability to kind of play tall, play small in a way, but he's just got a good engine too. So interesting to see where they play him this year, the Dons. That's a big question for me. So see if we stick with him on the wing, or he kind of moves forward or back.
Just going back to Jordy Clark, a few comments in the chat. Reckon Longmire has said he's going to play off halfback, and so he must have said that at a press conference or something. So that's probably a bit more.
It's promising.
So we can probably add into the list of players that are going to.
But once again, are you going to keep him on the chance that happens?
Yeah, that's the hard thing. Well, I'm probably going to go earlier in the draft now if that happens, though.
I think Jordan Clark's probably a round 2-3 kind of player.
Okay, that's higher than I would have thought, but I would have thought 5-6 type thing.
Yeah. I think just because
you've given him so many chances.
Name and new opportunities.
Anyway, we'll move on from Jordan Clark. Let's move on to Finley Mcrae. So he's gone from a centre forward to just a centre only. He only averaged 43 last year, but he did come home like a house on fire. He did have house on fire. 63.8.
Well, just a small little fire?
Yeah. Like
someone's waste paper basket.
Yeah, when you set the oil on fire on the pan. Actually, I don't, because I'm a sweet cook. But when some people set the oil on fire, you just got to kind of pat it out, and then it's fine.
I've never actually set a pan on fire.
Basically, that one, none either. But anyway, you burnt toast, Case.
I do not. I'm actually quite a good cook.
Okay. Actually, I think I've seen a bit of your work. It's not too bad. Anyway, Finley Mcrae, just with I know, even with forward status, it would have been hard to keep him, I think, anyway. The thing is, like, he played the last 4 games of the season and was used heaps in the midfield. So he averaged 55% of the CBAs in his last 3 games of 2021. But I think Collingwood was just trying a few kids in different spots and stuff like that. I wouldn't read into it too much, wouldn't you?
Yeah, yes. But for me, like when guys like Mcrae or the guy we'll talk about next, Caleb Poulter, his teammate, also lost centre forward status mid-only. When they've got that DPP there, you can almost just have them as your last keeper, and just because it's a free swing, because if they go okay, especially with forward status, you know, this year and last year where it's been really tough to score with those guys, you can almost make a case for them. But when they get to the point and they're only averaging that mid-60s, it's hard as mid-only. Like Poulter in our Podcasters League, I've got him, and he was basically, I penciled him to our 20th spot because of that centre forward DPP. Now he's lost it. And Tom Sparrow, who had it in AFL Fantasy World last year, but now has it across the board. So he basically comes into that position because I just need a few more forwards. And I think Sparrow and Poulter are kind of on the same path. So for me, that's a big decision. It's like, yep, they've got DPP, so I can make an excuse for you know, taking a punt on someone like that. Where, you know, Poulter, I'm really keen on him long term, but I just think unless your team's in massive rebuild mode or you're keeping a lot of players, I just don't think he's capable in most draft leagues. Yeah.
Just again for listeners, I just think it's important to specify. Yeah, you look at it 2 ways. You look at it if you're in a deep league or you're in a mid-range like ours where you keep 12 to 16. Those are the kind of players that are harder to keep in those type of leagues. But the deeper ones, you definitely think he's going to be good for the future.
Yeah,
there's always new players to keeper leagues that think it's like every time you besmirch a young player, you're not playing the game right. But there's a lot of strategy if you've got less keepers, that's for sure.
Big time.
Paddy Dacos,
the last loss. Wow, he averaged 50.4 last year, and his lost forward status is a mid only. If that's not the biggest contender for a scrap heap in the whole entire world of fantasy, I don't know what is.
Yeah, especially with them bringing in a few midfielders as well. It's looking pretty grim, isn't it?
Down, Paddy Dow.
Well, that's the new song maybe we need to go to. Anyway, that's it for our losses, and we're going to get into the players that have gained DPP. So it's kind of like we've got through the negatives and we got them out of the way. Now let's get into the positives, Kay. The players that have gained their dual position player status. So first up, I'm going to talk about this guy, and that is...
He's your boy.
Oh, I'm very excited about this one. So Jed Anderson has gone from a mid-only to a forward-only, I think. That's weird. But anyway, his 2021 average was 80 on the 80 mark, right on at 79.7 if we're being specific. But I'll talk about why that was that kind of high later in a second. But yeah, I just like this one because a lot of owners were hoping for this one. So he missed round 1 through injury last year. Round 2, he had a whopping 126. So came in, just went absolute bang. Round 3, he was on 46 at quarter time and finished the game on 60 after being subbed out in the second quarter. So this guy can go big. If he's got a midfield role, he can score huge. Okay, but coming back from injury last season, he played the majority of the first game up forward and then rotated midfield forward basically for the rest of the year. So that's why he's got his forward status. But yeah, he averaged 74 from his last 5, but that was returning from injury. So the thing about him, though, is Hugh Greenwood now comes in. So that worries me because they're pretty similar type players. But in the past, we've seen Cunnington and Jed Anderson play in tandem before. So it's not like he can't play with another inside ball there. And, Cunnington being out with the cancer treatment, he might be out for a while. So, yeah, there's going to be some competition for that inside mid when he comes back. But I think at the moment, it's not a huge concern just because we've seen him play with a similar player before. But yeah, if he gets that midfield role back that he had in 2020, so if we work out BCV calculations into this, he averaged 104 in 2020 with BCV scoring. So he really has the potential, I think, to be almost the number 1 forward in the game if he can get back to his 2020 scoring. What was the number 1 forward average this year?
That's the biggest call I've ever heard in my life. I'll check that in a second.
I said potential, not
but Jed Anderson will be 28 next season.
Yep.
Which is in the strike zone.
Range.
In the strike zone.
Yeah.
And he's centre forward DPP. Yeah. So that's sweet.
Yeah. Can I say I didn't say he will be. I said he has the potential to be.
Well, anyone has the potential to be.
Well, he can score big. Like, he can absolutely score big. And there's not a lot of forwards going around.
That's true. Yeah. Forwards are so scarce.
Yeah. Anyway.
So this year, the highest averaging forward was Aaron Hall, 109.
Yeah, yep.
Dane Zorko, 109. And Jack Zebel, 100, with only 3 players who cracked tons.
So maybe I'll rephrase that. Has the potential to be top 3 this year?
He could be a top 20, top 10.
Top 24. I reckon he'd be out there.
Top 25 was 78.2.
Yeah, I think he's going to have more than 78.2. If he's playing midfield, that is. If he's playing, that's what I mean. If he's playing that midfield, 2020 midfield role, then
if
he's
you
got
take his 29 average, he's a top 20 average player. Yeah,
or whatever. Anyway.
Jade Gresham's the next one. This is a big gift from the fantasy gods here. He only played 3 games last year, was injured in the third, did his Achilles. Averaged 73, but had games of 95, 107, and then the 17 in that injured game. So that brought his average way down. So his best season ever was 2019, where he averaged 83.4. For me, yes, he was tracking beautifully last season, but I think he needs forward status to be relevant. He gets it this year. I think he's already training from what I read after that Achilles, so that's really good news. So, I think if you are a Jade Gresham owner and you held the faith through his midfield year and his injured year last year, I reckon you're going to reap the rewards here and be licking your lips.
It's just a player I take no notice of. I can't even provide a comment on that case.
But if he's going to average 84, which he did in 2019, he's going to be a top 20 forward. So,
do you find there's just heaps of Saints that are just pretty bland?
They're all Jacks or something.
They do have Jack Steele, who's like the greatest fantasy player of all time. But I don't know, I find a lot of them are just kind of...
They're all similar. They're like Carlton players.
Yeah, pretty much actually. Yeah. Another one that we backed in last year. I was a bit skeptical whether it might happen just based on the last few weeks of the season. But if we look at the season as a whole... The Oracle called it from well into that year. I didn't say I disagreed. I was just wondering because, there was a bit of a change towards the end. But ended up getting back status Justin McInerney.
Yes.
That is. So, you want to talk about this?
Well, yeah, I can. Averaged 69.5 in the end of for the whole season. Averaged 79.8 in the last 5, including 2 tons. Just really got busy then, and we flagged it multiple times. Honestly, can't believe they didn't give it to him last year or 2021. But look, I think his back half of last year was just really, really positive. They like to look like it looks so. They like the ball in his hands as a distributor off that half-back line, and I think he can be around that 80 average for the season, if not more. I don't know if he's got like a huge ceiling in him, but I reckon he's going to be one of those blokes who, could be a back for the next 5 years and just maybe average somewhere between 80 and 90, but never really cost you a game in terms of, 50s and that kind of crap.
Yeah, I just really like him as a player. But
he's not going to be like Lockie Whitfield or
Rory. I don't think so as well. But he's just a player I'd like to own because I just like watching him play. Yeah, so he's just one of those kind of players for me. So but I think he's definitely got an 80 potential in him, and that's going to be handy as a defender.
I think so. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens with like Blakey back there, and obviously Jake Lloyd takes a shit ton of ball off those guys. So Sydney are a bit of a raffle in terms of who's going to go big.
Who's the other one that always scores well when one of Lloyd and Dawson's out? Harry Cunningham. Yeah, so it's just going to be interesting to see what happens to him as well. We'll talk about Conor Nash. Now, technically he's added centre, so that's a bit
boring.
Who cares? But
you just like Conor Nash.
The thing is, like, he didn't lose the forward status, which he never really was going to because he only played the last, I think, 4 or 5 games in the midfield. But the issue with him, and there's a lot of talking points about him because I think people were worried about him losing forward status. But everyone's saying like, yes, he's going to play midfield again this year. He's going to be awesome because he was a huge fantasy scorer towards the end of last season, or just a really handy forward to have on the cheap, especially in the classic formats and things like that. But the thing is, Clarko's gone. So every time there's a coach change, you've got to be skeptical with these kind of role changes that happen under the old coach when a new coach comes in. So anyway, we just don't know what's going to happen at Hawthorn under Sam Mitchell. So there's going to be players that go super high on him, and it's the kind of punt you're going to have to take to probably get him. Yeah. But it could go either way. So they've drafted a couple mids that I think they're probably pretty keen to give a go because I think they firmly believe they're in a rebuilding phase, and they're probably happy to play a few of their young midfielders that they've drafted, I think, this year. So that's probably going to cause a few issues there. I can see Wingard becoming a full-time mid if he's fully fit as well. I can see them just running through there. He's one of the senior players in there. He's probably one of the better midfield options that they've got in probably a weaker talent pool. There are some good midfielders in there. But so then if you're talking about those good midfielders, you've got Mitchell, Warple, O'Meara. Mitchell's obviously a Brownlow medalist, but there can be some question about how effective or how much impact he has. Then you've got Warple, he can go missing. O'Meara can go missing. Phillips can go missing. Shields is getting on, and Newcomb's just a new kid on the block. So there is a potential there for him to kind of squeeze into that midfield somewhere, but it's just a tough. I still think it's just a tough one to crack because there's just so many options in there. But then, like I said before, new coach, you just can't trust it. We'll go back to looking at Mcdonald from North Melbourne last year. Had that cushy role under Reece Shaw. David Noble comes in. completely gone. So it could be a similar scenario. So I'm just saying draft with caution, that's all.
Yeah, new coach can giveth and can taketh.
Absolutely.
Stephen Cornelio has gained forward status.
B2P.
Back to pod.
Stephen Cornelio.
When you average 59, yes, that's what happens.
Back to pod status.
What do you have? Last 5, average 28.
Yep.
And only managed to put together 56 and 74 in the 2 finals. Now, interesting. I wonder if he didn't have forward status, whether most coaches would keep the faith. I assume you would, because 2018 he averaged 110, 2019 103, 2020 97.5 adjusted. So obviously you would have backed him in, but hell, having forward status eases the blow of a horrendous 2021. Sorry, I should say. But look, I'm just thinking he might be a real steal in some startup drafts. Like, do people have that bad a taste in their mouth with Stephen Cornelio that they just don't have any faith, or we're just going to see that forwards just so scarce that he's going to go a lot higher? I could see it going either way.
I can see him going lower than he would have last year, but higher than he would have if he was a mid-only. That's for sure. It definitely bumps him up a few rounds.
If he was a mid-only, he might have been one of the bargain buys of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I was in a redraft, because I kind of prioritise forwards and things because they're so scarce, I'd be tempted to go kind of early on him. You take the punt. I'd round 3, round 4. No, I know that's high.
Oh, God.
I know that's high, but that's what I do, and I tend to go okay in the redraft leagues because people kind of neglect the forward options, and those forwards are going to get snapped up so quick.
Forwards are so light on this year.
Yeah, exactly. So I know it sounds super high. I acknowledge that, but sometimes you got to make those calls and those forwards because like people draft mid, and then they're picking forwards average 50 after that, and the top team in the league has a forward that averages 105, 106, that type of thing, and there's just a huge deficit between your top forward and their top forward. There's a 50-point gap there, right there. Yes, you can make it up in the midfield, but I don't know. Sometimes it can just get there.
Well, for me, Tim Taranto is going to be top 5 picks this year.
Yeah, he'd have to be as a forward status. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Your boy Dan Rioli.
Yeah, so I like him a lot more. He has gained back status. So I think he may have got it in one of the formats last year. I can't remember which one. No, maybe not. But anyway, he's added back status this season. So he's a back forward. So that's actually super handy that he's kept the forward status as well, because he scores a lot better in defence, but you probably want someone you can play at forward. And we're always talking about how scarce forwards are. So he averaged 78.4 from his last 5 in 2021 playing off that half-back line. So if you had that in your forward line, you'd be pretty damn happy. Actually, he's a grand final player in one of my dynasty leagues because I had Green and someone else that got injured in the last round. They couldn't play my forward line, so I had Rioli, and he was actually really serviceable. So yeah, I just see that halfback role continuing because I think he's the most effective there. But yeah, I like it. I think an average of 70s. I'm not going to go super high, but I think an average in the 70s is possible for him.
Especially your D5.
Yeah, and as a forward, you take that as D5 or B5, F5. Yeah, F5. Yeah, F4 probably. Even, especially with the scarcity. So yeah, you'd take that from there, I think. So what do you think?
I'm keen on him. I think he's going to, if he plays the halfback, it's like the best thing in the whole entire world. Yeah. Because that's where he's going to score, and he's going to be a forward for you. Kind of like what, I don't know, Nick Hind or someone was doing last year. Jarman Impey. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
I reckon the next guy could be similar. Tim O'Brien. So, has got back forward status. Yes. Look, he averaged 57.
The same Tim O'Brien, that guy that was at.
He averaged 57.9 last year, was shit, yes, but came home really hot. Averaged 75.4, including a ton. Look, he could be a starting player, and at worst be a very, very good flexible bench cover option, because the Dogs have brought him across. They've lost Young and Wood, so they need someone to play centre half back, basically.
Yeah, but does anyone need a maybe 75 averaging defender
forward?
At best? Oh, maybe it's forward, actually.
Do you need a 75 averaging forward? Yes, you do.
Best. Like, he's going to play the key defensive role, isn't he?
Top 25.
He'll play a key defensive role, right?
Interesting.
Let's go through it.
He's going to slide, and I'm going to pick him up, and it's going to be
after
tasty.
The pod, I'll look at all the key defenders in the league, and we'll see what the best one averaged, and he'd have to better than that. It's not going to be high. So we'll have to wait and see. But I just,
as a forward, he's got forward status.
Yeah, I know. Even so, like, it's not going to be as high as many of the forwards.
I'm going to draft him, and I'm going to laugh all year at you.
Anyway, another Dow makes the pod, this time for a different reason. So Thompson Dow gains forward status this season.
Which is handy, I think.
Yeah.
Look, he averaged 45 last year.
New Dow on the block.
59.7, outscored his brother. Look, I'm actually quite keen on drafting him late. Not a keeper, obviously, but the free swing of the centre forward status, I love that. And let's see, year 2 or 3 into his career now. So I like the flexibility of the centre forward status, obviously, but did have a 73 in the back half of last year. Are the Tigers starting to play some kids in that midfield? If so, I think he's around the mark. I think Dimmer might have even said he's, training well at all that. I don't know, everyone's training well in December, but
yes, correct.
But look, I think there's some upside there. Look, you could get him probably your last round of your draft or something like that, or very late. But definitely worth a look with the DPP.
All right, guys. Who is last on the list?
Last on the list, I don't know. You put him on the dock. But
I did.
Luke Pedler averaged 33. Yes, he's gained forward status, but doesn't really excite me that much.
The only reason I've chucked him there is just as an underage scorer in the sample under 18s, he averaged 101.5. So now he's been given forward status. If he can get...
Is he going to get a game?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, if you can get a consistent game, like for me, he's a stash option. But if he can get a game and, get into the midfield, he can score okay. Well, sorry, he's got the potential to score okay, just given what we saw at junior level. So that's the only thing. The only reason I've got him there, when you've got somebody who averages, a big 100 in a tough year, I guess, and it wasn't like the NAB League guys where they're playing. They actually played last year. So I've just got him there just because he was a good underage scorer. Listed as a forward status, I reckon he's one you take in the last round and hope for the best.
So you're taking Luke and I'm taking Thompson?
Sure, let's do that if we can get that. All our leagues probably listening, they'll probably take them now to spite us and we'll say suckers. Yeah. Anyway, now we're going to go into players that have changed positions. So not added or gained DPP, but they've actually changed positions completely. Could screw a few people. But yeah, we'll talk about the first one. That's Ben Mcavoy. So he was a back ruck last year. He's always going to be ruck, but he's gone to ruck forward this year. So he's changed from the back to the forward. Again, we keep talking about how hard it is to find forwards this year. Kays, what do you think of that one?
I love it. Averaged 80 last year. Super, super handy change for anyone that owns him. Because I think as a back ruck, you had to play him as a ruck because the backs usually score all right. So he was probably a D5, maybe D4.
Yep.
But potentially was always a starting ruck. Whereas now, if you can have someone else in, and whether that's what the role happens with Reeves or Lynch there, we see no Segler's there, so that's one experienced ruckman out. So does Mcavoy play mainly ruck and scores awesome as a forward, or do we see him actually spend a bit of time up forward and you see like someone like Reeves or Lynch come in and play a dominant genuine ruck role? I think they could both score in tandem too if that happens.
Yeah, this is kind of like a real world scenario in one of my leagues. So Mcavoy was someone I was pretty keen to chuck on the trade block because there's a guy in our league who actually owned Reeves, and he was someone I was thinking I might try to get off him to actually so I've got the backup ruck of the future coming through. But then I've also got Segler at Geelong. So my team's definitely in the window. So my thinking was I'll just get Reece Stanley, I'll get a Saba Radigalia, and I'll just have the handcuffs there if I need them. But now given this forward status, that's just changed my trading tactics completely. So I'm going to keep Mcavoy now and probably try to play Segler in the ruck at Geelong. So it's just interesting how you can 1 minute you've got this player that you're ready to let go of, you think he's getting towards the end, and then they have a position change and
completely
changes their perspective. Let's move on to Will Hoskin Elliot. He's gone from a forward to a centre. Only averaged 71.9 last year, so that's pretty gross as a midfielder. He's only ever valuable as a forward, isn't he? When he gets those years where his forward status, that's when he's valuable. When he's not,
because he's an F4, F5.
Yeah, there's a chance he gets forward status back because he always gets it every second year. But I'm just ready to look elsewhere with him. That's all. I just don't want to waste time.
Agreed.
What about Harry Morrison? So he's gone from a back centre to a centre forward. Now that he's a forward case and forwards are scarce, are you back on board this guy? I used to love him 3 years ago.
I did. And he was pretty handy last year at times.
He was your old Ben Keys.
But then, we know that Ben just took off under my tutelage.
What happened to Harry Morrison under that one?
Interstate relationships don't really work out.
I think you weren't as, passionate. You weren't as experienced yet. You got third years
Harry
into
Morrison
podcasting.
was my Damon Greaves. We all have them.
Absolutely.
Potentially. Look, with the Hawthorn list at the moment, I really want to see someone like Dylan Moore for me. I've got him on my side as a forward, but he was averaging low 70s. I'm not talking, but does Sam Mitchell love him? Does Sam Mitchell love Harry Morrison? These guys have been around that Box Hill setup for ages. Is he going to give guys that you may not see coming a bit more of an opportunity, or is it just I'm happy to play the genuine rookies or your Newcombs, or I want to stick with that. So we don't know enough about Hawthorn. So I really want to see some pre-season games.
Sorry, something made me laugh in the chat. Someone on Facebook's actually asked, is Hef wearing pants? Is Hef wearing pants or shorts? Yes, I am. They're just skin coloured and short. That's all. But I swear I'm wearing pants. This is a G-rated show.
It was, maybe it's PG now.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely wearing pants for those listening at home. Don't get too excited out there. But anyway, let's move on. Who we got next?
Conor West, mate.
Conor West. So he was a centre and he's moved into a forward position this year. So he was a mid-season draftee and he averaged 107 in the waffle beforehand when playing as a sole mid. Playing the wing in his first AFL game, scored 76. So he actually looked alright and all the classic types jumped on because he was cheap and he did make the money in the end. But he only averaged 44 from the remaining games after that. So yeah, average for a 50.8 average for the season. So look, if he can get some midfield clock, he's the type of player that could be handy. And the only reason I'm throwing there is just because he's a forward, so he's one to look at. He's one I'll look at really, really late. Like second last round type thing if he's available, just to jump on. So you've got a few forwards there. If he plays, he might be good for a 70 or an 80 here and there if he gets a bit of midfield clock. So yeah,
if he can.
Yeah, that's it.
This one really threw me. Braden Campbell went from a centre forward to a back only. So 2021 average of 52.5. Last 5 only averaged 39.5. Now, apart from his 96 in round 2, he didn't really score probably what we thought Campbell was going to. He was drafted pretty high in most keeper leagues. So maybe a bit let down, and I think people were probably hoping that he'd keep that forward status to make him keepable again. I suppose with back status he can be retainable, but for me, I reckon there's better back options around, and I'd probably chase someone else in that Sydney side, I think. But yeah, interesting one.
Yeah, it is an interesting one. Yeah, I think he's still a bit green. That's all. Needs another year or two before he's fantasy relevant. Definitely someone to stash. Definitely stash.
Yeah, if you're playing deep leagues, you're not getting rid of him. But
yeah, if you're contending for a flag, you're probably looking elsewhere. One of my boys, Nick Blakey. Yeah. So he went from centre forward to a backman now. So what do you think?
Oh, there's no surprises there.
Yeah, he played that. Well, the thing is, like, no,
he was not a forward.
Yeah, he didn't play any forward last year, did he? I was just thinking, like, he only played back for like 6 weeks max, and there's people that played more positions and didn't get changes. You know what I mean? But it makes sense that it happened for sure. Yeah. Do you think he's going to be a fantasy scorer?
Potentially. I think he'll have games.
What can he put up? What can he average?
What can he? Obviously, average 69 in his last 5.
I was thinking 70.
I think he's made 75er.
Yeah.
Maybe.
As a defender, it's just I feel like everyone's got good defenders.
They do, and that's where he's lost value. Same as like Campbell. Campbell goes from being potentially a stash because he's got the centre forward to most people having decent backs that it's just like, I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's got on my list. I'll look at him as a keeper. My backline's pretty strong though. It's probably
and that's the thing.
Line.
Yeah. You might be able to trade him for someone.
Yeah, maybe, if anyone's that keen. If you're my league mates listening, come at me with trade offers, please. Let's move on to Tana Bruin. So he's gone from centre to a forward. Just another one I think is interesting. Only averaged 37.7 last year, but I think just being listed as a forward, he's handy because he looked a fantasy type in the preseason last year. Didn't show a lot in the actual season, obviously, but we expected him to play in midfield, I think, a bit more last season. Obviously, play as a forward to get his forward status. He's just a player I think you want to stash for that year he transitions into GWS's midfield. It might be a couple years away, but if you can stash a player like them in your dynasty leagues, I think you could be good in that transition year as a forward. So I think you got to stash a player like that if you can. Like only for dynasty, I'll be thinking about it. But
Not for me, but you can have him.
Okay,
this is the guy I might be the most excited about with position changes this year. Trent Bianco.
Yep.
Back mid to forward only.
Yep.
Now we know how scarce forwards are. So he averaged 61.2 last year. Last 5 was 63.6. So he had 7 of his 11 games he played last year with 60 pluses, which is pretty good. Comes into his 3rd year breakout. Was a big fantasy scorer at underage level.
Yep.
So he's on my hit list for sure. Like if I owned him, I'd be keeping him purely off the position change.
Yeah.
And he's someone I'm super keen on getting on to my side.
Yeah, he's got definitely got the potential to be a fantasy scorer, just going in those underage numbers. But he did show glimpses last year that he can go big as well. So he had one huge game, didn't he?
I think he kicked a few goals or something. From memory, but look, I think he's one that I want.
How early are you going to go on him?
Will he go back into the pool? I don't know. Who owns him actually? I don't know if we're 4 or 5, round 4 or 5.
Okay. Zanks has joined the chat. He's been on the podcast a few times, filling in for you, saying he's ready to talk trades. So join the chat. So he's in our league.
Zanks trading is like, I'll give you, like Harry Morrison for Jack Mcrae and Luke Jackson.
Anyway,
like, he's the worst.
I don't want to talk with Zanks about trades right now. But let's move on to the listener questions. On to the listener questions. First one comes from @Russ2468. Kays, do you want to read that one out?
Sure. Do you see much changing in Ladham's role / scoring next season? And is he best 22? I think like Port, his high scores will come when he's the number one ruck, I'd say. And he's just got a 2G for P question.
Let's just answer that one first, because every time we read the two parts, I always forget one of them. Okay. So let's just go easy on my brain, and probably listeners' brains as well.
Ladham's.
Yeah, I think I actually saw him out and about in town the other week.
Is he the number one ruck at Sydney?
I don't think he is.
Okay.
Hickey, I think, was too good last year. I think he remains. But yeah, I saw Ladham's at the Cumbie, in a notorious Adelaide pub for partying, and he was looking like he was having a pretty good off season. That's for sure.
Shredded. Yeah,
you could say that. But also, he was in Adelaide up until for so long. Like, he didn't actually leave for Sydney. So I'm skeptical about his commitment. I
probably wasn't due there.
I know, but
it probably just started today.
Like, I feel like he just didn't want to be traded, and then took as long as he could to leave Adelaide. I'm just questioning his commitment. That's just a red. I own him. Like, I don't want him to be good. I just see that it's a bit of a red flag.
You're actually making a lot of hot takes tonight.
Well, yeah, and I'm probably saying things that I shouldn't. Or it's not going to get back to me. I'm just having my opinion, but just things I've seen and impressions I get of seeing him around town and stuff. I don't know how seriously he takes his footy. That's all. Hope he comes at me. Get on the podcast, argue with me.
I think he's got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, so I think... then he was one of the players that got done for the COVID breaches for partying like last year, having people around when he shouldn't and stuff like that. I just see a few warning signs there with him. That's all. You know, just one of those players that might have a few off-field issues that might just cost him a few games here and there. It's going to hurt you fantasy-wise. That's all I say.
You own him.
Yeah, I'm going to keep him because he's my second best forward. Essentially, I got Jed Anderson, then him, and then not a lot after that. So I'm probably going to keep him because I've not much else there. And when he does get a number one ruck role, he'll score well. But I just don't think he's got that number one ruck role. I think they want him to play a ruck forward role because we saw them rotate McLean, we saw them rotate Amadi in those same positions, and I think they want a good ruck forward or a ruck forward. And I think they've got
like Amadi party.
Yeah, exactly. So and I'm not even sure if he's ahead of him.
No, you have to be
just because they traded for him. But in terms of actual potential and talent, I'm not really sure. So, yeah, I'm not huge on Ladham's, but I'm probably going to keep him anyway. Next question from Russ.
2G for P. He wants you to rank the following DPP forwards in terms of most likely midfield time. So, Stephen Coniglio, Tim Taranto, Adam Treloar, and Josh Dunkley.
Oh, sorry. I actually did a bit of a pre-rank, but I didn't actually read most likely of midfield time.
Taranto, for me, gets the most midfield time.
Yeah, I think so too. So I thought he was going to be the best fantasy scorer would be just because Dunkley started so well last year and then got injured and then he was only shit after he got injured. I thought Dunkley might be the best fantasy scorer. But yeah, I might swap that around. So I'll probably go Taranto, Treloar, Coniglio, Dunkley as terms of midfield time. It's hard. They'll get pretty similar. What do you think?
I think Taranto is the one you want.
Yeah, but in terms of midfield time, though, who gets the most midfield time? I think
Taranto's still midfield time.
He was so stuck up forward at the end of last year.
But Treloar's got to play in their midfield because he doesn't really have any other string to his bow.
Yeah, well, obviously he must have done 35%.
Maybe Dunkley and Coniglio. I think Coniglio will play a bit of forward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. They will all be pretty similar, I think. Oh, except Taranto probably has the most out of those. But yeah, I think between Dunkley, Treloar and Coniglio, it's pretty hard to split who has the most midfield time out of those. Because Dunkley's just super effective in the midfield as well. It's just that midfield role so deep. It's a tricky one, but yeah, hopefully that answers the best. Chiodo5 is not even asking a question, but he's saying, by Fark, I hope that UF gives Marshall ruck forward status, unlike fantasy. So there's a comment in the chat as well. They're saying it's the worst fantasy decision going around. Yeah, Kays has just walked away from the microphone. I'm
about to sneeze.
You can sneeze in here, mate. No one's going to judge you.
They're going to judge me.
You don't have COVID, do you?
No.
Okay.
I've just got hay fever. But apart from that,
that's fine. I had no idea what was going on. I thought he was just about to leave. I thought I offended you. Anyway, next question. DJ for Brooks, what's the go with Daniel Howe, both as a DPP option? Will he get a game on a Mitchell? Well, he's not DPP. We talked about that. I think he's still in the mix under Mitchell, but...
I'm not keeping him.
Nah.
And I think Hawthorn any of the new teams with new coaches, I think Hawthorn especially, Collingwood especially, I just need to see them play.
Yep.
Pre-season before I make any super hot calls, I think.
And hopefully we get more than one game out of that too. At Ninja Spoon 1, doesn't have a question either. Just want to say thanks for the content. You're very welcome.
Anytime.
Ninja Spoon, definitely welcome. Okay, at Sandgroper19, what's he asking, Kay?
I see Jordan Clark and Lockie Hunter as contenders, but who do you think may pick up a reclass early in 2022?
All right, so the ones I had before was Dacos. I thought before Josh Dacos, that is. I thought Lockie Scholl as well. There was one more. Oh yeah, and Jordan Clark as well. I think he will play in defence according to
Lockie
Longmire's
Hunter ruined me.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting that forward stats.
No, I don't think he is either.
He was very lucky to get it in the first place, I think.
Yeah, I know.
At AJS Hawker, thoughts on McInerney as a defender mid? Do you see a bump in scoring when Dawson's gone? I think we've covered that one as well. At Chad Leverington writes, how is Horn Francis not a forward mid? You watched a lot of him this year, so yeah, it's a bit crazy, isn't it?
Ridiculously crazy.
You're speechless. You couldn't even speak.
But from a fantasy point of view, which is I'm assuming why they rank all these players, like you can't just have no forwards. Like, especially with the new crop of kids coming in, like you saw what was going on with, like Schoenberg or, everyone had, Nick Cox had back forward DPP and like all this other shit. And like, you can't even give someone like Horn Francis who kicked a heap of goals in Sandful forward status. I don't know. It just doesn't seem right.
Yeah. Next question, Kaz.
At Henry Katz. So UF usually gives us a few bonus DPPs. So he wants some data-led ones, which obviously you've just delivered there, Hef. And he wants a few Remedy Kombucha gut feels from the Oracle. So
I haven't even thought about it. I didn't even see this question. So I'm going to go with your gut feels here.
My gut feels. My gut feels. So Jono Segler lost his ruck forward status. He's only ruck only, which is big. But I see him going to the Cats. I think Stanley will still basically be number one. They're going to play those two in tandem. I reckon Big Segsy will get his forward status back. So he's going to be very handy. So keep the faith with Segs. As you said before, Lockie Scholl gets his back status back. I just think with Dorso and Seed on that wing, he's got to play somewhere and it'll be in defence. But I reckon we're going to see 2 to 3 of the following players, Pendlebury, Mundy, and Cochin.
I really like those gut feels.
To get DPP throughout the season. I reckon Pendles can sneak a defender DPP. Wouldn't surprise me if Mundy 400 gets a forward status. Yep. I reckon they're going to have to transition him out that midfield to play some of these, give these kids some genuine time in there. And I reckon Cochin's just lost a bit of touch as a pure mid. I reckon he might kind of go up forward and be a bit of a crafty half-forward flanker. So I reckon they're my 3. We always see those older guys kind of regress a bit in their fantasy careers, but do tend to pick up some DPPs.
Just one last one that's come through on the chat. From on Facebook, doesn't actually have a name, but he reckons, will James Harms go close to getting forward status?
Oh, good question. So he lost the defender status last year.
Yep. He was playing pretty well in the midfield. He plays those kind of like tagging
he
roles.
Runs through.
Yeah,
so potentially.
Depends where he plays when he's not, playing those kind of lockdown roles, I think. Yeah, and like where they start kind of thing when they rotate as well. So when you get, who's the St Kilda player that came in? I'm just having blanks all night to Melbourne's side. Who's a good fantasy scorer, Dunstan, came through. That took me long to get.
I forgot he went there, yes.
So that could cause some kind of rotate. If he comes in, that could cause some sort of rotation through somewhere. You might see him start in different positions, and that's generally how the DPP, well, in fantasy anyway, is given. So you could see some kind of some changes there if they do have a few different starting positions, but you're speculating still whether he gets a game or not each week and stuff like that. So not 100% sure on that one. For me, he looks pretty midfieldery to me at the moment. But we'll have to wait and see with a few different people coming in out of the side. Anyways, Kays, that is a wrap of the podcast. Did we talk about Remedy Kombucha at the top? I can't remember.
I mentioned some. Yeah, you didn't give me any.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't give you anything.
I'm so thirsty.
Yeah. Anyways, I'll put the Remedy logo on the screen.
So if my gut feels aren't right, you can blame Hef for there not being full with Remedy.
That's correct. I'm sorry about that. But I must have skipped past it. And we did have actually... Oh, no, that's right. We talked about it because I forgot where I put the Remedy kombuchas.
Yes.
They're somewhere in the house. I'm going to go find them. They're going to be warm.
Obviously, your brain is frazzled today.
Like I said, I've been up since 4:30 and been in the sun all day. I'm ready to go to bed. But anyway, thanks for listening to this podcast. Get us around us on our socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, if you are keen to sign up as a member, we've already got the bonus resources flowing. We've got the Drafty analysis guide. It's a 30-page PDF with analysis of every draftee in the competition. And then we also have our top 12 fantasy draftees bonus mini episode there. So yeah, Casey, look, you got something to say.
When are we back?
When are we back? I think we're back mid to early January.
Early Jan? Yeah,
I think around January 10th the schedule is so far. So we'll be back next year looking at the Crows, Brisbane and Carlton on that podcast. So yeah, I think that wraps up, Kaz, unless you've got anything else.
Nope.
All right, no worries. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you very, very soon in the new year.
Have a great Christmas and all that.
See you later, people.
Bye.